Robert McNamara, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, conceived the idea of establishing the most modern infiltration prevention line on the southern bank of the Ben Hai River to block the enemy's movements. McNamara's idea was studied and implemented by 47 of America's most brilliant scientists. After 3 months of research, the Scientific Council under McNamara's direction devised an ambitious plan. The defensive line was estimated to be about 20 kilometers wide, extending from south of the 17th parallel to Route 9, with a length of over 100 kilometers running parallel to the Ben Hai River from the East Sea to Saipan, Laos. Within this zone, a 500-meter-wide construction corridor would be leveled like a football field to deny the enemy any place to hide. A dense network of fortifications would be established, with a watchtower approximately every 2 kilometers and a company or battalion-sized base every 4 kilometers. The line would be equipped with a complex system of fortifications, including trenches, bunkers, and dozens of layers of barbed wire fences interspersed with various types of mines and explosives. Directional mines, disc mines, leaf mines, claymore mines, illuminating mines, and instant detonation grenades. The U.S. planned to use 20 million mines and 25 million small bombs. Particularly, the line would be equipped with state-of-the-art electronic devices such as tropical trees, smart machines, and human scent detectors, which were sophisticated sound detectors with different battery lifespans of 15 days, 3 months, or 6 months. Khe Sanh Base was identified as the center of this electronic barrier system. Therefore, the U.S. built Khe Sanh Quang Tri as the most robust, continuous, and fortified defensive complex in northern South Vietnam, including key strongpoints like Lang Vây, Hong Hoa Military District, and the Ta Con Airfield Defensive Complex. The Ta Con Strongpoint Complex was the core of the U.S. defensive group at Khe Sanh. It spanned approximately 5 kilometers in length and 3 kilometers in width and included a makeshift airstrip over 3,000 meters long, capable of supporting C-130 Hercules aircraft and several armed helicopters. The system of fortifications and obstacles was built to be solid and continuous, with prefabricated concrete combat bunkers, sandbag-covered individual fighting positions, and surrounded by 6 to 10 layers of various types of barbed wire fences and densely planted minefields. Tropical trees, electronic listening devices were scattered throughout the area. In 1967, the U.S. Army and the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, ARVN, evacuated civilians from the areas surrounding the demilitarized zone along the 17th parallel to create a free fire zone. General William Westmoreland, the U.S. commander in South Vietnam, decided that they needed to bait the enemy into a trap, forcing General Giap to engage in conventional warfare, which was the strength of the U.S. military. President Johnson had a model of Khe Sanh built in the White House and received daily briefings on the situation there. Thus, within the Iron Belt erected along the border area with North Vietnam and Laos, beyond the McNamara Line and a series of bases such as Cua Viet, Con Thien, Dong Ha, and Cam Lo, Khe Sanh was expected by the United States to be a magnet to draw in the enemy forces so that the U.S. could use its superior firepower to annihilate them in a reverse Dien Bien Phu scenario. The White House, the Pentagon, and the U.S. Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, MACV, in Saigon all focused on studying the lessons of the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, with a special report on the battle prepared for President Johnson running into dozens of pages. Both MACV and the U.S. High Command recognized that Khe Sanh had a fundamental advantage, not only compared to Dien Bien Phu but to any fortress in history. That advantage was the support of an extremely powerful firepower system, independent of the battlefield, with dozens of B-52 Stratofortress bombers striking daily. In December 1967, the Politburo of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Vietnam convened and approved a resolution, later adopted by the Central Committee as the 14th Central Resolution. It is time to mobilize the greatest efforts of the entire party, the entire people, and the entire military in both regions to elevate our revolutionary war to a new level of development, launching simultaneous attacks and uprisings to achieve decisive victory. After studying the deployment of forces at the end of 1967, the Central Military Commission and the Ministry of Defense of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam devised the 1968 Strategic Plan to launch simultaneous attacks on cities and towns combined with mass uprisings, initiating a general offensive and uprising with the main battlefields being Saigon, southern Vietnam, and the Tri Thien Hue region, with a focus on Saigon, Hue, and Da Nang. Alongside this, the regular army would launch an attack to attract, disperse, and destroy the enemy, with the main battlefield being the Route 9 Khe Sanh area. The Route 9 Khe Sanh front would play the role of drawing in and pinning down a significant portion of the enemy's strategic mobile forces, mainly U.S. troops, creating favorable conditions for the entire South, particularly the Tri Thien Hue area, to carry out the strategic general offensive during the Tet Offensive of 1968. For the U.S., even decades after the Vietnam War ended, the true objective of the North Vietnamese Army in the Route 9 Khe Sanh campaign remained a mystery. General Westmoreland believed that the primary goal of the North Vietnamese Army was to capture Khe Sanh and create a New Dien Bien Phu. In a September 1994 interview with a U.S. colonel, General Vo Nguyen Giap revealed that he was aware of the U.S. Air Force's overwhelming strength, making it impossible to replicate Dien Bien Phu. His actual objective was to inflict heavy casualties on U.S. forces, causing them to become bogged down, lose morale, and eventually withdraw. In reality, he achieved this objective after 6 months of fighting, during which U.S. forces suffered continuous and significant losses. The forces of the People's Army of Vietnam, PAVN, participating in the campaign. Infantry divisions, the 304th, 320th, 324B, and 325th Infantry Divisions. In May, the 308th Division and the 246th Regiment replaced the 324B and 325th Divisions, which were reassigned to other battlefields. The 304th and 325th Divisions, approximately 17,200 troops in total, were tasked with besieging Khe Sanh, while the 320th and 324th Divisions, approximately 16,900 troops in total, focused on cutting Route 9 and blocking U.S. reinforcements. Additional forces, the 270th Regiment, Vinh Linh, and 2 local battalions from Military Region 4 were stationed in Quang Tri Province, along with 1 group and 5 sapper companies. Artillery regiments, 4 artillery regiments, 16th, 45th, 84th, and 204th, later reinforced by the 675th Regiment. Anti-aircraft artillery regiments, 3 anti-aircraft artillery regiments, 128th, 282nd, and 241st. Armored battalion, 1 tank battalion, Battalion 198, part of the 203rd Regiment, equipped with 30 light PT-76 tanks. Support units, 1 signal battalion, 1 reconnaissance battalion, 1 chemical battalion, 1 engineer regiment, 2 engineer battalions, 1 flamethrower company, 6 transport battalions, and armed forces from the districts of Gio Linh, Cam Lo, and Hong Hoa. Tactics and armament. A notable shift occurred from primarily infantry-based combat to combined arms operations, using various heavy weapons for the first time, especially artillery and tanks. The use of tanks in a surprise attack to destroy the enemy was particularly significant. As a large-scale combined arms campaign, it involved 136 towed artillery pieces or mortars of 100 mm caliber or larger, 150 anti-aircraft guns of 37 mm and 57 mm calibers, 30 PT-76 tanks, 157 tracked vehicles, 821 trucks. Tank operations. Bringing tanks into combat for the first time in mountainous terrain was an extraordinary achievement. Over 50 days of marching, mainly at night, Battalion 198 maneuvered 30 PT-76 tanks over more than 1,000 kilometers, crossing 5 large rivers, fording 250 streams, and enduring 15 air attacks by U.S. forces. Many tank parts and ammunition were carried by civilian laborers on foot, transported across rivers on makeshift bamboo rafts to maintain secrecy and surprise. When crossing the Sai Pan and Sai Pang Hiang rivers, more than 300 local people were mobilized each time to build submerged roads for the tanks to cross, cut bamboo to construct rafts, and transport essential supplies and tank tracks. Sniper operations. In this campaign, the PAVN used a small number of snipers. In the B-5 front of the PAVN in 1967, there were only about 100 snipers, causing significant damage and anxiety among U.S. troops. Most of these snipers were in their early 20s and had undergone just 3 months of training. Their primary weapon was the K-44 rifle equipped with an optical scope, a legacy from World War II. The U.S. forces in the Battle of Khe Sanh primarily consisted of Marine Corps units under the operational command of the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force. There were approximately 45,000 troops along the entire front, including 28,000 U.S. personnel. These forces included 3 reinforced regiments from the 3rd Marine Division, 4 battalions of patrol and transport vessels, battalions 5, 10, 53, and 301, 9 artillery battalions, 3 battalions, and 1 mechanized company, all of which were strongly supported by air and artillery fire from the rear. At Khe Sanh itself, U.S. forces comprised 3 battalions from the 26th Marine Regiment, 1 battalion from the 9th Marine Regiment, the 3rd Forward Operating Base of the U.S. Army with a total of 5,880 troops, a 155mm artillery battalion, a tank company, an anti-tank company, the ARVN 37th Ranger Battalion, a reconnaissance team of 300 soldiers, totaling 6,680 troops. In April, during Operation Pegasus, additional forces were mobilized, including the U.S. 1st Air Cavalry Division, the 1st and 26th Marine Regiments, and the ARVN 3rd Airborne Brigade, along with many other Ranger and security units, totaling 20,000 troops supported by 300 helicopters and 148 artillery pieces. In addition, Operation Niagara and Operation Arc Light provided air support for Khe Sanh, involving an overwhelming force. More than 1,000 helicopters, more than the combined combat helicopter fleet of the UK, France, and Germany, and U.S. aircraft flew 24,000 sorties, including strategic B-52 bombers, dropping over 114,000 tons of bombs, 7 times the amount of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima and equivalent to the total bomb tonnage dropped on Japan in 1945. Logistical and technical support for Khe Sanh included helicopter medical evacuation, medevac, and low-altitude parachute extraction system, LAPAs, supply drops, provided by a massive modern airlift operation using C-130 transport aircraft. The U.S. was able to supply Khe Sanh with up to 600 tons of supplies per day, compared to the French, who could only supply 100 tons per day to Dien Bien Phu. From January 19 to 25, an advanced electronic sensor system, codenamed Muscle Shoals, was also deployed around Khe Sanh to support aerial and ground reconnaissance systems. The U.S. forces at Khe Sanh were supported by the most advanced firepower available at the time. New counter-battery radar systems such as Sky Spot, 16M 107 175mm self-propelled guns positioned at Camp Carroll near Cam Lo and at the Rockpile, 18,105mm howitzers, and 8 155mm cannons at artillery bases in Quang Tri, as well as medium-range artillery support from positions north of the Hai Van Pass, all contributed to the heavy firepower available during the battle.